Why does the Elder Scrolls lore suck? Hi there. My name is Crazy James. And today, we're going to answer that question. And if you like the video, make sure you give it a big old thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Without any further ado, let's dive right into it, shall we? The Elder Scrolls got its start in Arena. 1996, I do believe. The story back then was very simple. Not much lore to speak about, and the game pretty much established the basic pillar, which was the world itself, in the first game. And this is why Bethesda is so good at their world building. Because even though they could have changed stuff, they chose to keep the map from Arena basically the same in all the provinces we've been so far. Skyrim, Cyrodiil, Morrowind, and Hammerfell and High Rock. Basically, all of those provinces we have been to in main title games. And they're roughly the exact same as they were in Arena, in terms of where the cities are placed, where the dungeons are, all of that stuff. And it gave us just all the major locations that we know today. Even in the Elder Scrolls Online, it respects this. And this is what makes this series of their world building so great, because they keep it consistent. Now, in terms of the story of the first game, the story, like I said, was simple. You were part of the Imperial Court. Jaeger Thorn betrayed the Emperor, and he was the right hand of the Emperor at the time. And you get thrown into the Imperial dungeons. And you get a vision of the Imperial Battle Mage. She comes to you and begs you to get strong and free the Emperor of Tamriel, which the hero does. And that's it. That's literally basically it. You go to a bunch of main dungeons in the game. There is one guild, the Mages Guild, of course. You can't join it. But that is the entire game. It's a pretty solid dungeon crawler, and I'm currently in the middle of a playthrough, so if you want to watch it, I'll leave the link to the playlist down in the description. But moving on to Daggerfall, we've already established that Arena gave us the world, of which the whole universe is now based around. And in Daggerfall, much of the lore was written during this time. Because people on the Bethesda forums back in the day, they were literally taking ideas, like Bethesda, they were taking the feedback and ideas of the community and actually implementing them into the game. For instance, all of the gods and deities, a lot of them were named after the people on the Bethesda forums to pay somewhat of a homage to those people writing all this lore that they were implementing into the game. And it led to so many awesome phantasmal things. For instance, did you know Cyrodiil had rust dragons? They also had Imperial dragon riders. They had all these cool things, and Cyrodiil was indeed depicted as a jungle back then, just purely. And not only that, much of the game's staple mechanics, such as being able to transform, being able to learn magic, join guilds, and political factions, a lot of this was established in Daggerfall. And this game introduced a lot of guilds into the game as well. For instance, the Dark Brotherhood Fighters Guild and Thieves Guild got its start here, as well as knighthoods. Each kingdom had its own respective knighthood, which you can only join one knighthood per kingdom, I do believe. And also temples. Temples were a joinable faction. And depending on which faction you joined, you would gain reputations based around that. And certain factions would hate you, others would love you. And it was a very in-depth system, and it's more akin to the game being an adventuring simulator. And if you're interested in playing it, I will leave a link in the description where you can download Daggerfall for free, as well as getting Daggerfall Unity, which is a remake of the engine, essentially, to make it play better and make it moddable. And there's been a renaissance in the modding community with the Daggerfall game, and they've made some pretty cool stuff on the Nexus, so I recommend checking that out as well. In the Daggerfall game, you're sent to investigate why King Lysandas isn't at rest. And it eventually leads the player to picking up the Totem of Tiber Septim, which, depending on who you give it to, the ending would be different in the game. Yes, I know, it's unheard of. A Bethesda game having multiple different endings. I know. Shocker. But it was true. I do believe there was about 6 to 8 different endings depending on which ruler you gave it to. And depending on the outcome, it would change Tamriel forever. And that was basically the entire premise of the game. In Morrowind, they did something that many would consider taboo, and many would consider a shame. But, quite honestly, they chose to strip out most of the lore due to a new design director being appointed. His creative vision, this new director, was one of representation. Meaning, if it's not something you can trace back to real life, that idea wasn't allowed in the game and simply wouldn't be used. So that's why the Imperials turned into the Roman Empire. That's why so many things in Skyrim and Oblivion and in Morrowind are just a metaphor for things that happen in real life, because that's just the design direction the lead director was wanting. Everything must be a metaphor. And so the phantasmal rust dragons, the implications of all of, like, the Daedra possessing and all that, just so many ideas stripped right out of the series, then and there. And in each series going forward, and Bethesda has admitted this, they are retroactively taking things out of the game to make it more streamlined. And it's also caused them to dumb down on the lore. And in terms of Morrowind's story, Morrowind was pretty great. In terms of a gameplay perspective, this is when Bethesda mastered the both of size and function. It was smaller than Daggerfall, but it still kept majority of the game mechanics introduced in Daggerfall, to where it created a in-depth role player with next to no handholding. And this is the game that really hammered home and cemented things into the series that we all know today. Arena gave us the basics. Daggerfall gave us the ingenuity and the brainstorming. And then Morrowind cemented what the Elder Scrolls was going to be from then on. And if you haven't played Morrowind, I also recommend that. You can find it on Steam, I do believe, for a decent price. Or the Bethesda store. But the game itself, you play as the Nerevari, a demigod, as it were, or an avatar. And you are here to defeat Daggerfall. Of course, your character won't know that until like halfway through the game. Because, contrary to popular belief, Morrowind's not a power fantasy. Even though you are an avatar, you are not aware of it until much, much later, almost toward the very end of the game. Now, this again would change in Oblivion. Because in Oblivion, they not only kept stripping the lore, like they tore it apart. In terms of, Cyrodiil's jungle in Morrowind? You read books about that? Nope. It's not a jungle. Tiber Septim made it not a jungle. Boom. They kept dumbing down. And we got a subpar Cyrodiil for the most part. And Oblivion is a fun game. All these games are fun in their own ways. It's just their lore consistency is not the greatest. At all. And not only that, did you know Cyrodiil, lore-wise, was actually supposed to have full-on chantries dotted around? Not these, like, shrines to all these divines, but actual chantries. And did you also know that in the Imperial City, it was supposed to be much bigger than what it actually was? Was I disappointed? Not really. Because the cities themselves were big enough. And I'm not one to gripe on size, really. I'm more of a function type of person. What can I do in this video game? Oblivion, the whole basic premise of that game is you are the chosen champion. You are meant to defeat Mehrunes Dagon. This is the first game where high fantasy, power fantasy was introduced. And it would be cemented in Skyrim, which I shouldn't have to explain. But in Skyrim, it's just a full-on power fantasy they tried. And just like in Oblivion, they stripped even more of the lore out. In Oblivion, even, Skyrim was depicted as a snowy, wintry landscape. Of course, it's not. It's barely snowy anywhere, apart from the Pale, and that's it. Also, again, they tried to make a metaphor into real life. And I'll link a video in the description of a guy that broke down Skyrim's map. And it's very interesting because Bethesda really did implement things in real life. Because of how, like, the striations and everything is and why they made the changes of the map they did, it was to make it more believable. However, this is a fantasy. If we wanted to play real life, we would not play video games. We would simply just live our life. So, when anyone says the geometry is not believable and they're talking about a video game, or any game, it doesn't have to be believable. It's nice to have suspension of disbelief, but where it begins to fall flat is where you make it your point focus, to where you might as well just not even play a video game, considering it's so like real life. and video games in general have been following this pattern. However, this is the chosen design direction of their lead design team. They want to make everything a metaphor and keep stripping mechanics to make the game much more streamlined. For instance, in Skyrim, they straight up nuke the Dragonborn. Because, believe it or not, Dragonborns didn't always have the gift to shout. As a matter of fact, the shout ability was straight up just a thing you could learn. It was a form of magic. And it was particularly exclusive to Nords. And contrary to popular belief, not every game are hundreds of years apart. Straight up, Skyrim is the only game where spellcrafting is not a thing. It's the only game where it's set 200 years into the future. And with the release of The Elder Scrolls Online, the lore got even worse in consistency. The Elder Scrolls Online is kind of a last-ditch attempt at making the games make sense. And even the lead writer they reportedly said that the main titles could be seen as just fantasies. That the Elder Scrolls Online is the quote-unquote real Elder Scrolls experience, and that is the only canon game. Of course, that didn't go over well with fans, and it was rightfully pretty much changed for the most part, even though it's still regarded by quite a few people as the only canon video game in the Elder Scrolls series. And your feelings on that is entirely up to you. Can the Elder Scrolls lore be fixed? I honestly have no idea. I do have my own head canon, or fan canon, about the games. Which, if you want to hear more about that, smash that like and subscribe button. And let's say if enough people interact with this video, I will make another video going in depth into how I would fix the continuity and lore of the games. Of course, wouldn't be perfect, but it would probably be more consistent and a little bit better than what Bethesda has just put band-aids over it and called it a day. And that's pretty much all I wanted to rant about this time. The lore is inconsistent, and the reasons for why is simply put, bad business decisions, along with bad design decisions. Does it make the games any less fun? No, it doesn't. Does it make me, along with some other people, long for a better story? Yes, it most certainly does. I hope y'all have enjoyed this little rant, and thank y'all all so much for watching. And as always, I will see y'all in the next video. Peace out, and have a very wonderful, blessed day.